Before we get into today's edition of Just the Truth, let me tell you about the latest special from Mike Lindell at MyPillow. The standard MyPillow, normally $49.98 for a limited time only, just $14.88 with promo code Joey. Go to MyPillow.com, click on the radio listener specials, and see all the specials. There's a limited quantity of just 10 at this special price. That's $14.88 with promo code Joey. Thanks for joining me in the PhD Weight Loss Studio. To lose weight for the last time, visit myphdweightloss.com. Welcome into this Christmas week. Merry Christmas to you. We managed to make it through the weekend without the government shutting down as feared by the Democrats. We have those details for you. President-elect Donald Trump, speaking to a group of about 21,000 young conservatives yesterday, promised he's not going to waste time, telling the group at Turning Point USA's America Fest that his administration will be fully operational by 2 o'clock on January the 20th. A GOP member of the U.S. House is under fire for not voting since July the 24th, yet keeping her seat in the Congress. A horrible crime in New York City where a migrant from Guatemala set a passenger on a subway on fire and watched her burn. So far, it's not been confirmed whether or not the suspect was here legally or illegally. We have those details, too. And South Carolina Congressman Jim Clyburn says he's not concerned about Elon Musk's promise to fund the campaigns of moderates against radical leftist Democrats, saying the Democrats will just have to outwork the Musk-backed candidates. And South Carolina Senator Josh Kimbrell joins us today with a quick preview of what to expect in South Carolina's legislative session in 2025.
I told you we'd be back.
And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free.
It's Joey Hudson.
I wanted to name it the Joey Hudson bill, but, you know, they don't allow you to put names on bills. But I wanted to call it the Joey Hudson bill because I know that one's been near and dear to you for a number of years.
That's how it's done. Let your voice be heard.
And the truth shall set you free.
Here's Joey Hudson.
Speaking to a group of 21,000 or so enthusiastic young conservatives yesterday in Phoenix, Arizona, President Trump explained how the youth vote played such a large part of his victory.
And we got the highest share of youth vote of any Republican ever before in history. And we had great people. You know, my son Barron said, Dad, you got to see this one, that one, this one. He said he likes Joe Rogan a lot, too. He said, you got to see Joe Rogan. Dad, you got to do an interview with these people. And he is a sort of a feel for young people. I guess that's a nice thing to have when you're young. But he has a feel for it. And it was amazing. So we got the highest vote ever for a Republican candidate. We won by 36 points with young people. That never happens. A Republican loses by 36 or 40. So I'm going to have to start thinking about TikTok. I think we're going to have to start thinking.
President Donald Trump, a hit with Charlie Kirk's America Fest. It's not just an event. It is truly a celebration of real unapologetic conservatism. It's where patriots gather to talk about their faith, their freedom, and the future of this great nation. And this year, it was bigger than ever. Over 21,000 tickets sold for a venue that holds about 14,000 or so. That's the Trump effect. And how amazing is it that this many young conservatives would travel to Phoenix, Arizona the weekend before Christmas? Charlie Kirk's organization is just amazing to me. So what did the president-elect have to say? First, he reminded everyone that he won, saying the thing that brings people together is victory, is winning, he said to this enthusiastic crowd. And you know what? He's not wrong. Under Trump's first term, we had the greatest economy in history, energy independence, a military second to none. Now he's ready to bring it all back bigger and better. And speaking of bold moves, Trump dropped a bombshell about the Panama Canal at the meeting. He's demanding that it be returned to the United States. Well, wow. I mean, I'm not sure if that's even possible, but he seems to think it is. And, you know, the canal is a crucial part of U.S. commerce and military readiness, by the way. He said to the group, we built it, we use it, and they gave it away. Talking about, of course, Jimmy Carter, who gave it away years ago back in the 70s. And this is classic Trump. America first, always. So let's talk about the border. President Trump isn't just focusing on the southern border. He says he's also going to shine a spotlight on the northern border as well, where Canada is letting people and drugs flood into the U.S. Now, you know, in the past, Canada has sort of gotten away with this because we have all been focused on the southern border. I think Donald Trump's going to be focusing on the northern border as well. He promised the largest deportation operation in American history. He promised a massive ad campaign to highlight the dangers of drugs like fentanyl, and he didn't sugarcoat it. He said, if you want to ruin your teeth and your skin, take fentanyl. Of course, he's talking to a group of young people, and he's not stopping there. Trump promised to sign day one orders to end Biden's energy restrictions, cancel the electric vehicle mandate, and reopen the pipeline to Alaska. He's going to unleash American energy like we've never seen it before, and as he likes to put it, drill, baby, drill. He also brought up the culture war. He's not backing down there either. He vowed to remove woke policies from our schools and military. He said, with the stroke of my pen on day one, we're going to stop the transgender lunacy. He's also pledging to end child mutilation surgeries and keep men out of women's sports and out of their locker rooms and restrooms. Now, this is leadership, folks. This is common sense leadership that we've been wanting. Of course, the president-elect couldn't resist a little jab at the Democrats. He said they're befuddled after their big loss. He's right. They're in disarray. Meanwhile, the conservative movement stronger than ever, as witnessed by that large group of young people in Phoenix. I wasn't there, but was told by some who were there that the energy at America Fest was just electric. Charlie Kirk said it best when he said, this is the biggest event we've ever hosted. And why wouldn't it be, with President Trump setting the stage for a historic second term? So here's the bottom line, folks. January the 20th, of course, can't come fast enough. Trump's ready to restore America's greatness. He's not wasting a second. Whether it's the border, the economy, or taking on the woke agenda, President Trump is all in, and it's going to be fun to watch. Trump, of course, promised to close the borders. And here's a great example of why this has to happen. A disturbing and heartbreaking story coming out of Brooklyn, New York over the weekend. This is the kind of tragedy that highlights just how far we've strayed from the safe and secure cities we once had. Yesterday morning, Sunday morning, a woman was brutally set on fire and literally burned alive on a subway train in Coney Island. Reports say that she was minding her own business, sitting on the train, when a man calmly walked up to her, took a lighter, and ignited her clothing, and watched as she was quickly consumed by flames in literally seconds, according to reports. This is the reality of New York City right now, and other cities around the country too. We're seeing things like this happen in New York. The New York Police Department has identified the person of interest. They've arrested a 33-year-old. His name is Sebastian Zepeda. He's a migrant from Guatemala, surprise. Now, we don't know if he entered the country illegally or illegally. We don't know that. But here's what we do know. Our broken immigration policies and lack of enforcement have opened the door for heinous acts just like this. And this is not fear-mongering. It's the reality. This happened at the Stillwell Avenue subway station around 7:30 Sunday morning in broad daylight with people standing around. New York Police Department Commissioner Jessica Tisch described the suspect's actions as calm and deliberate. Officers on patrol at the station said they smelled and saw smoke. They ran to investigate and found this poor lady engulfed in flames. Can you imagine? A woman sitting on a subway car, minding her own business, burned alive because of some deranged individual who was in our country and shouldn't have been. And here's something that stood out. Zepeda didn't even try to run, they said. He was found sitting on a bench on the platform with a lighter in his pocket, as if nothing had happened. And thank goodness that they were able to catch him as a result of a phone call of some young people there. The NYPD released his description and images. 3 high school kids recognized him and called 911. These young people showed incredible courage and responsibility. And thanks to their quick action, transit officers arrested the suspect without further incident. Hats off to these kids and the officers who acted swiftly to take this guy off our streets. Mayor Eric Adams called the attack senseless and offered prayers to the victim's family. And that's a good thing. But let's be honest. As the Democrats like to tell us, prayers aren't enough. We got to have action. We need to make our city safe again. Mayor Adams said this type of depraved behavior has no place in our subways. Well, you're right, Mr. Mayor. What are you going to do about it? Because this isn't an isolated incident in your city. Crime in New York City has been out of control for quite a while now, and a lot of it goes back to people from other countries. And again, we don't know if this guy was here legally or illegally. We just know he's from Guatemala, and he was in New York City, and he's been here about a year. Let's not forget the victim here. This woman did not deserve to die like this. She didn't even know the man who killed her. There was no interaction between them, according to witnesses. This wasn't a robbery gone wrong. It wasn't an argument that escalated out of control. This was pure, unprovoked evil. Witnesses and MTA workers understandably were very shaken. One MTA worker said it looked like her clothes were completely burned off. Another person said, that's messed up. It's only 3 days until Christmas. And they're right. This woman's life and her family was just turned upside down by this cruel person. Your comments are welcome on the Furman Ford text line, 864-477-JOEY. That's 864-477-5639. Emails always welcome, joey@joeyhudson.com. If you've been putting off a visit to PhD Weight Loss, now's your time because it comes with an amazing free gift. Joey Hudson here. During December, the founder of PhD Weight Loss, Dr. Ashley Lucas, is giving the first 100 people to sign up for a consultation a free weight loss and energy supplement bundle. What a great gift. Do what I did. Take control now before heading into the indulgent holiday season. Get a grasp and avoid the holiday pounds. I dropped over 30 pounds, and I'm not worried about parties and overeating because my PhD coach taught me coping mechanisms to help me enjoy holiday events without gaining the weight. Best of all, I never took a weight loss drug. I'm not dependent on a prescription. And I was never hungry. PhD Weight Loss is not about depriving yourself. Lose the awful belly fat, gain energy, and avoid weight-related health issues. You will feel so amazing about yourself and truly enjoy the holiday season. PhD Weight Loss. Ask about the free gift when you book your consultation. Call 864-644-1900. That's 864-644-1900 or go to myphdweightloss.com. By the way, one more thing on the New York City subway killing before we move on, and just how out of touch officials are. Governor Kathy Hochul is facing a massive backlash on social media after promoting her so-called success in making New York City subway safer, just hours after this horrific crime of a migrant from Guatemala allegedly setting a woman on fire on the F train in Brooklyn, leaving this lady to burn to death in a gruesome attack. This crime occurred around 7:30 a.m. on Sunday, and that afternoon, Governor Hochul was busy celebrating her subway safety efforts on X. She tweeted, "Since deploying the National Guard to support NYPD and MTA safety efforts, crime is going down and ridership is going up." Her timing couldn't have been worse. The public, well aware of the tragedy, quickly slammed the governor. Critics posted graphic images of the attack, with one user just stating, "You must have missed today's news, Governor." Even Melissa DeRosa, a former aide to Andrew Cuomo, called Hochul a tourist who isn't in touch with what's really happening in the state, noting that 2 people were murdered in the subway today. The alleged killer, as mentioned a minute ago, Sebastian Zepeda, 33-year-old migrant from Guatemala who arrived in the U.S. roughly a year ago. Authorities still are trying to determine his immigration status. Police say that Zepeda threw a lighter on the woman, igniting flames that engulfed her in literally seconds. Advocacy groups and critics are now questioning Governor Hochul's claim of improved safety, with many calling her post tone deaf. This is another example of the disconnect between Democrat leadership and reality. Governor Hochul's tweet tried to sell a narrative of safety, but the facts on the ground, the fear New Yorkers face, paint a much darker picture. The real question is, how much longer can and will New Yorkers tolerate policies that allow chaos in the name of political correctness, in the name of promoting Governor Hochul's narrative that, hey, we're doing better. It's safer. Tell that to the poor woman who burned to death's family. Wow. Speaking of bad politicians, here's an example of what's wrong with the U.S. Congress. There were reports over the weekend about Representative Kay Granger. Now, she's a Republican congresswoman from Texas, a Republican, okay? She's been serving in the House since 1997. Reports surfaced this weekend suggesting that Miss Granger has been living in a memory care facility, but her office is pushing back on the claims. Here's what we know. Miss Granger, she's 81 years old. God bless her. She's retiring at the end of this term, and she's been absent from the Capitol for months. According to the report, she hasn't cast a vote since July 24th and has missed over 54% of votes this year. A report from the Dallas Express claimed that Congresswoman Granger is in a memory care facility, which quickly made the rounds in the media. A source from Granger's office, though, told Fox News, and Fox News reported that while she's in a retirement facility that provides memory care, she's not actually in the memory care unit herself. We'll take them at their word on that. Ms. Granger released a statement, though, acknowledging that she's faced, quote, unforeseen health challenges over the past year, which have made frequent travel to Washington very difficult for her. Despite her absence, Granger's office emphasized that her staff has been working hard to deliver for her constituents. And look, I'm sorry that this lady has been experiencing health challenges. That's bad, and I pray for her healing. She's 81 years old, and unfortunately, when you're 81, you have health issues. Let's not forget, Miss Granger has had her time in the limelight. She's a trailblazer. She's been in Congress for nearly 3 decades, served as the first female mayor of Fort Worth, Texas. She chaired the Powerful Appropriations Committee. In fact, she returned to the Capitol. Now get this, she did go back to Washington in November for the unveiling of her portrait as chairwoman of the Appropriations Committee, where House Speaker Mike Johnson and Majority Leader Steve Scalise spoke in her honor. This lady, she's an achiever. She's done well in Congress. But I think her time is probably past. Maybe she should have thought about retiring and enjoying life years ago. Her absence, of course, didn't go unnoticed on both sides of the aisle, particularly the Democrats, though. Representative Ro Khanna is using this as an opportunity to criticize what he calls a gerontocracy in Congress. Khanna's been very vocal about the need for term limits and a shift away from what he described as a system that rewards seniority over fresh ideas and new energy. He's even taken aim at his own party in the past. He's not afraid to call out Republicans or Democrats. He called for Senator Dianne Feinstein to step down over her health concerns. Remember how Senator Feinstein was literally barely getting around in her final days in the Senate? He called for her to step down literally just days before she passed away in 2023. One senior Republican told the media that Ms. Granger's decision to stay on was strategic, given that the GOP's majority was razor thin. The source who spoke on anonymity said, frankly, we needed the numbers. And they're not wrong. In a Congress this divided, every vote counts. But still, at what point do we as Republicans step up and acknowledge it's time to go? I mean, what's the takeaway here? On the one hand, you've got a seasoned lawmaker with seniority dealing with personal health challenges while she's trying to serve her district. On the other hand, her extended absence raises questions about the broader issue of age and fitness in Congress and that seniority and staying past your prime. So, again, I'm sorry for her health challenges, and I pray for a long, long life for her in retirement. But isn't this an example of what we as conservatives rail against when people are taking advantage of the situation? I mean, you tell me, would your job allow you to be out for months? Would your job allow you to miss 54% of your duties and you be able to keep drawing a check, keep getting that check every week? I don't think so. There's not many jobs out there that I know of that would allow this, and the U.S. Congress should not either. Your comments are welcome on the Furman Ford text line, 864-477-JOEY. That's 864-477-5639. Emails always welcome, joey@joeyhudson.com. Speaking of the Furman Ford text line, it's never been more important to support locally run businesses owned by people who actually live here in the upstate. Let me take a minute to talk with you about our friends at Furman Ford. If you're looking for a new vehicle, maybe a great pre-owned vehicle, one you can trust, or maybe you're looking to order that special vehicle. Either way, if you want a new one, a brand new one, or a pre-owned that you can trust, the folks at Furman Ford, they're there to help you. Their name is on the sign because their name is on the line, because every single transaction is important to them. Jim Furman, Matthew Furman. They do business the right way. When you stop by, when you give them a call, or maybe when you just send them a quick email, you're always going to have access to a member of the Furman Ford family. And by the way, they also offer great service, and you're not going to have to wait weeks and weeks to get it done. And you do not have had to purchase your vehicle at Furman Ford. Doesn't even have to be a Ford. They service all makes and models. Visit my friends at Furman Ford online at furmanford.com, furmanford.com. The first regular session of the 126th South Carolina General Assembly will convene on Tuesday, January the 14th, 2025, and legislators will go back to work. Representing the people of Senate District 11 in Spartanburg is Senator Josh Kimbrell, and he joins us on the guest line today. Welcome. How are you, Senator?
Well, doing well, Joey. Good to be with you.
It's always a pleasure. Let's just jump right in. A lot to talk about. Give us a quick overview of the issues you see as priorities as you go back in session in January.
Well, two of the issues that we're going to tackle are things that we wanted to do that were already on our schedule, and two are going to be forced on us. Let's take the ones we wanted to tackle first that were already kind of agenda items, and those two, at least in my mind, and certainly a lot of my colleagues, is additional tax reform, i.e. more tax cuts and restructuring of the tax code for the state, and tort reform. Those are two things that are really huge, and tort reform is a pressing issue. I mean, as we've talked about before, you've got an awful lot of small businesses closing the doors because they simply can't afford the insurance costs anymore. We've got to restructure that. So I'd say that is one of the top priorities, right along with continuing to reduce our tax rate and make our state more competitive. Those are two issues that were going to come up anyways. Now we're going to be faced with two other issues that are kind of forced on us. One is we're going to have to tackle this educational scholarship account stuff, this ongoing fight over school choice. We had a state Supreme Court ruling that handed down that it was essentially unconstitutional to allow any state money to go to any kind of private school, particularly if it happened to be a faith-based school. And, I think that's ridiculous. It goes back to the old debate over the Blaine Amendment, which I think is anti-faith and really bigoted against people of faith. So I'd like to tackle that separately and go after repealing the old Blaine Amendment. But we're going to have to work on school choice, and I think that's going to mean we go more in that direction of a tax credit versus the ESA program. And then, of course, we now have a federal lawsuit against the state over mental health care, and that kind of falls into that larger debate over restructuring DHEC and making sure our health agencies are not as bloated and cumbersome as they are right now. So those are really four big issues: tax reform, tort reform, education, health policy, that will come up pretty early once we get back in January.
Yeah. Let's start with tort reform. We've seen this, as you mentioned, a lot of small businesses closing after being in business for 10, 20, 30 years or more. First of all, let's talk about what you see as a solution, but assuming that you're able to pass what you'd like, how long until some of the small businesses see some relief?
Well, I think it would be fairly quick. I mean, rates will not immediately fall overnight, of course, because once you're kind of into a policy period, I know it has to come back up for renewal. But our goal is to get more competition back into the market. The biggest driver of the skyrocketing insurance rates for small businesses is so many insurers have said, well, with the current tort laws in South Carolina, it's just too cost ineffective to be here. So a lot of insurers have pulled out. So especially in the area of liquor liability for bars and restaurants, we've seen a lot of insurers just get out of the market. And that's really the issue. You have fewer choices, so you don't have as much competition. There's higher risk for the ones that are still here. So if we can just make it to where it's a more competitive environment, bring more insurers back in, I think you'd see relief fairly quickly and a lot more options for people to buy affordable insurance and reduce some of the requirements. I mean, one of the biggest drivers, Joey, in my view, particularly for like restaurants and bars, is $1 million liability limit. That's arbitrary and insane. I'd like to drop that down to about 250,000. So if you do that immediately, you could automatically provide relief through that avenue. So I think you'd see relief pretty quickly. And of course, it won't be, again, overnight, but I think it'll be fairly quick.
Yeah. With me today, Senator Josh Kimbrell. So, Senator, I get that as far as on the insurance side of the equation, but as far as the tort reform itself, let's say you have a small business and their obligation is reduced to getting a $250,000 liability policy, it doesn't change what they could potentially face if they lost a lawsuit in a court. So what's the tort reform side of that?
Well, the other two parts of that I'd like to incorporate, and I've pushed for this for years, one is joint and several liability reform. In other words, you can't just go after the person with the deepest pockets and just sue people for bigger targets. In other words, you have two people in a business together and one's worth $2 million and one's worth $200. You don't want the guy with the $2 million to be the one everybody goes after, which is what happens now. So we've got to change that to a prorate responsibility for individual business owners. Additionally, in my opinion, and I push for this, and I'm going to push to try to get it incorporated into any package this year, I want loser pays tort reform.
Yeah.
One of the biggest problems is people file a bunch of frivolous lawsuits that even if you win, if you're the small business that ultimately prevails and you didn't do anything wrong, you still spend $20,000-$30,000 trying to defend against a frivolous case. I want to change that to where if you file a lawsuit against somebody and it's found to be meritless and you lose, that you have to reimburse those legal fees. If we do that, a lot of lawsuits that are brought now wouldn't be brought in the first place. So loser pays is a huge component, in my view, to answering that question on tort reform and making it more competitive for small business. And I intend to push for that pretty aggressively.
Yeah, if you do that, you're going to have a lot of attorneys who are going to take a second look at a case before they start filing a lawsuit for sure.
Yeah, a lot of them just take it right now because it's billable hours anyway, right? So
yeah. If
you're going in, you got somebody that's willing to pay you $10,000 retainer to go sue somebody, you may not, I mean, there are certain laws in our state even now about filing frivolous suits, but it's pretty broad. And so what I think happens is some unscrupulous lawyers, there's a lot of good lawyers too, by the way. I'm not anti every lawyer, but some of these guys that are just chasing the ambulance down the street or take any case because the law of averages and all they need is one or two big verdicts to pay for the beach house for the year. So we got to make that less, it's got to be harder to do than that.
Sure. With me today, Senator Josh Kimbrell. So, Senator, let's jump to the tax cuts. I like the sound of that, but let's talk about that for a minute. Tell us what you're envisioning here, and what would this mean to the average South Carolina family?
Well, there's two approaches that are kind of being discussed now, and I'm involved in both of them. But I introduced a bill. Again, I introduced this 2 years ago, and then after that, the compromise was I didn't get the exact version I wanted, but it still led to the biggest tax cut in history with $2 billion in relief back in 2022. I've reintroduced the same bill, though, and that is to eliminate the income tax completely for businesses and individuals. And the way that I've proposed to pay for that is basically what Tennessee, Florida, Texas have done, and that is just get rid of all the sales tax exemptions. We have a lot of exemptions on sales taxes. Everybody says, well, if you pass the income tax repeal, you're going to have to jack the sales tax rate through the roof. That's not really true, because right now there's so many exemptions and loopholes on sales tax anyway. So if we just close those, you don't really have to raise the rate that much on income on the sales tax. And you can still eliminate the income tax and still the state has a surplus. So for example, right now, if you join, because you and I like to play golf, some days I'm okay at it, some days I'm not, but that's not the point. If you join a private country club, you do not pay sales taxes on that. If you join a private country club and you pay for a round of golf, that is sales tax exempt. But if you play a public golf course, like I know you and I both occasionally play the Village Greens in Edmond, you do pay sales tax on that. But that's completely arbitrary. One round of golf has a sales tax, the other doesn't. You can just make it more uniform and still cover most of the costs. So my view would be expand the tax base for all the tourists and everybody else is paying the sales tax, but everybody from the drug dealer to the prostitute, and I hate to be blunt, but everybody in the black market economy is still going to pay sales tax. So it doesn't actually take money out of the coffers of keeping our state in a fiscally sound position. But then everybody's paying a more broadly, and it's still cheaper for the average family because you're getting rid of their income tax liability. So withholdings goes away. You're not spending all this money on CPA every year. It just is much more pro-growth and pro-family to do what I'm proposing.
I like the sound of that. Let's skip over to another topic along those same lines. Last week I was talking with your colleague across the aisle over in the State House, Representative John McCravey, and he's talking about potentially giving some relief as far as property taxes to those, say, 65 and older, the senior citizens. Is that something you believe might find support in the state Senate?
Well, yeah, I mean, back 4 years ago, I said we should do that as well. So John and I are on the same page with that. I've long believed, and here's the complicated part. So let me first off just say, yes, I'm for it. Let's back up and talk about the complexity. People assume that the state is the entity imposing your property taxes. That isn't true. The state does not assess a property tax. That's at the county level and school boards, things of that nature. So if you live in Greenville County is assessing the tax, or Spartanburg County, whatever, in the school district in which you live. What we do have jurisdiction as the state, as the General Assembly, as the legislature, to limit what the counties and special purpose districts can do. So essentially, we won't be able to go in and directly cut the rate. We could direct the counties to, though, and we could also provide new guidelines. And so that's what it would look like, is we basically would have to extend the homestead exemption to provide greater relief above a certain age, particularly for retirees. And I support that. But that's going to be a longer fight than just income tax reform, because the income tax is directly assessed by the state, directly collected by the state, and the property tax is going to be more at the local level. So we'll have to really take a different approach to doing that.
Yep. And look, when you do that, I'm realistic enough to know that the counties and the school district and all, they have their budgets based on a certain amount of property taxes coming in, and they're going to be looking at you, well, how are we going to replace this?
Well, that's right. I mean, and the problem is, and here's one thing that will be an easy fix, and I proposed this a few years ago. I'm going to propose it again in January. Just having transparency. Usually most of this property tax hike you experience, most people don't even know this, most of the property tax hike you experience is levied by your school board or your local fire district, and they can do that because on most county property tax bills, the way the law is, the county is going to send you a property tax bill just directly from the county, and that's going to include everything in the county. So let's say you get your house property taxes on your primary residence, and it comes from Greenville County or Spartanburg County or Anderson or whichever county you live in. It's going to have you mail this amount in at the bottom. It's just going to say pay this amount. Well, it doesn't necessarily tell you which entity in that county raised the rate.
Yeah.
So the school district might raise the rate on you, but you think it's the county. So I have said we need to have an itemized statement. So when you get your property tax bill, it needs to be itemized which local jurisdiction is charging you and what are they charging you. It needs to be broken out so you know exactly where you're paying it, because oftentimes when your property taxes go up, it's not necessarily the county doing it, it's the school district or it's the fire district, and we need there to be accountability on that. So whenever people run for school board or get appointed to the fire district, that you know exactly who's voting to raise your taxes.
Yeah, good point. Senator Josh Kimbrell, it's always a pleasure. Appreciate your update here today. And look, as we go into the session next year, we're going to be counting on you to be our eyes and our ears in Columbia, and we'll check back with you often.
Well, I will be proud to do that for you. I always enjoy being with you, and I appreciate you keeping people informed.
Sure thing. Have a great day.
You too, sir. Thanks.
Whether you're replacing a broken appliance or maybe you're just upgrading, you're totally remodeling the kitchen, when it's time to get those new appliances, when you're ready for them, you don't want to have to wait weeks or even months to get started using them, right? Well, that's not the case when you shop with my friends at Discounted Appliance Warehouse. With over 11,000 square feet and 1,500 appliances at any given time, you can buy today and use today quite often. I'm talking about shopping with my friends at Discounted Appliance Warehouse in Pickens. It's worth the short drive over to Pickens. Jeff, Johnny, Kyle, the whole team over there, they'll take good care of you. They have an award-winning service department, expert installation, extended warranties, and at Discounted Appliance Warehouse, they treat you like family. You're more than just a credit card swipe to all the team over there. Discounted Appliance Warehouse, they're proud to offer Speed Queen, the only washer and dryers with manufacturer's warranties that cover parts and labor. You owe it to yourself if you're looking for a new appliance to head over to Pickens to Discounted Appliance Warehouse online at dawpickens.com, dawpickens.com. On the text line, texter says, Joey, the more I hear about drones and balloons, the more the security at the inauguration worries me. My hope is that the inauguration will be inside a building. We must remember that the Biden administration is providing security. Now, if that isn't the fox guarding the hen house, I don't know what is. I appreciate that text. Look, I hope that's not the case because I'm going to be right in the middle of the inauguration. We have to pray for safety, for sure. Texter, appreciate you and listening to my drive to Hendersonville each day from Greenville. Well, thank you. Appreciate you listening. Texter, same old Democrat Republicans like I've been saying for years. Republicans vote against one another more than the Democrats. Well, you're right with that. You know, we have had our issues. And I'm assuming you're talking about last week's showdown over the continuing resolution. Over the weekend, South Carolina Representative Jim Clyburn, yes, the same Jim Clyburn who's been one of Joe Biden's closest allies, who's been given credit for giving Joe Biden to the nation. Thank you, Jim Clyburn. Joe Biden's candidacy was dead in the water until he came through South Carolina in the Democrat primaries, and Jim Clyburn gave him a little boost, gave him a shot in the arm, which propelled him to the White House. And we have Jim Clyburn to thank for where we are right now. But he decided, according to the reports, Clyburn is brushing off comments from Elon Musk about funding moderate candidates in heavily Democrat districts. Now, you know, Musk, he's not afraid to stir the pot. We've seen that. We're going to see a lot more of it, I think. He posted on X saying he'd support these candidates to, quote, get rid of those who don't represent them. Now, when CNN's Victor Blackwell asked Clyburn about Musk's involvement here, here's Clyburn's response.
Democrats navigate someone who says, I'll just throw money at races to get you out?
Well, you outwork them. That's what you do. You outwork them. Look, I'm a child of the 60s. I grew up here in South Carolina. I missed the vote yesterday because I was a part of eulogizing the gentleman from very modest backgrounds who brought that flag down off the State House dome and started an effort all over the South to get rid of all of these Confederate emblems. We did that with a lot of money against us. When I worked with John Lewis back in the 60s, a lot of money and power was against us. We did what we had to do, and I don't know of a single Democrat who is afraid of Elon Musk's money.
Oh, so they're going to outwork him, huh? Really? So let's just pause right there for a moment. No one in the Democrat Party is worried about Elon Musk's influence, according to Jim Clyburn. You buy that? I'm not. This is the guy who's been shaking up industries, funding campaigns, backing policies that terrify the left. You think they're not paying attention? Clyburn tried to frame this like it's the 1960s again, saying that he had faced plenty of money and power before and always managed to prevail. He even brought up his work with John Lewis and the civil rights movement to underscore his point. I get it. Clyburn's trying to rally the base. Let's not pretend, though, that Elon Musk isn't a game changer in today's political landscape. Anybody who denies that is not living in reality, including Congressman Jim Clyburn. Let's not forget, Musk isn't just throwing around money for Republicans. He's talking about backing moderate Democrats in blue districts. He's talking about strategically targeting some of these blue Democrats with a more moderate person, because what we learned on November the 5th is that Americans of both parties are tired of the woke left, are tired of the extreme that some of the Democrats have tried to force upon us. Musk is saying, enough with the radicals. Let's get back to some common sense, Republican or Democrat. And what the left's response? They're calling Musk everything under the sun. They're blasting him for being an unelected official, a shadow president, a shadow speaker. CNN's Scott Jennings nailed it when he said the left is being hypocritical. They're fine with the billionaires like George Soros when he funds their progressive candidates, but when Elon Musk comes around, oh, no. He's a threat. He's a threat to democracy. And while we're on the topic of hypocrisy, let's talk about Jim Clyburn's role in Joe Biden's pardon of Hunter Biden. This is where it really gets rich, because Clyburn admitted on CNN that he personally urged Biden to issue the pardon. Here was his quote, "We as fathers have obligations to our children." Now, I understand that. Every father wants to protect his kids. My dad wanted to protect me. But does that mean bending the law? Does that mean undermining the justice system? You got to wonder how far this goes and how far Jim Clyburn would let it go. Let's bring this back to Elon Musk, though. The left, as we know, they're scrambling. They're trying to paint him as some kind of villain because he's willing to shake things up. I guess just because he's a billionaire doesn't matter that he's an American, that he's a voter, that he is someone who wants to see our government succeed. And he has some unique talent to running a large organization. And he's wanting to offer that talent as a volunteer. But the Democrats, because he is a volunteer, the Democrats want to make him look like the bad guy, that he's not qualified. He's not following the usual playbook here, and that terrifies them. Whether it's Twitter or X or whatever, funding candidates who don't toe the party line, Musk is a disruptor in business and in politics, and the Democrat establishment isn't exactly known for welcoming change, are they? They're not too quick to jump on something new, unless, of course, it's the latest woke initiative. Here's the bigger picture, though. Musk isn't just playing politics. He's calling out the dysfunction in both parties. Just like the example I gave you a little earlier in today's show of the Republican Congresswoman from Texas who's missed 54% of her votes and who hasn't voted since July the 24th. She's 81 years old. She's in ill health, and she's hung on when she probably should have resigned a long time ago. I think Elon Musk will be calling people out like her as well. Because, again, I don't care if you're a Republican, a Democrat, independent, or whatever label you have beside your name, you got to do what's right for Americans in general and for our country. That's the only way we're going to turn this around. And if moderates on either side get a boost because of Elon Musk, go for it. That's a win for the American people. We need common sense voices in Washington, right? We don't need radical agendas or backroom deals to protect the president's son, Hunter Biden. And that's exactly what we had here. We need for people to stand up and tell us the truth, whether we think we're going to like it or not. And again, stop thinking about what's best for the party, either party, what's best for a particular candidate, what's best for the family of the president, but what's best for our country, what's best for us collectively as Americans. Jim Clyburn says, hey, Democrats will just outwork Musk. Well, have at it. Go for it. We'll have a showdown. You take George Soros' money, we'll take Elon Musk's money, and we'll meet you at the voting booths on Election Day. That's it for today's edition of Just the Truth. Thanks for joining me in the PhD Weight Loss Studios. To lose weight for the last time, visit myphdweightloss.com. If you haven't joined my mailing list yet, visit my website, joeyhudson.com. Click on the Connect with Joey button so that you can receive our emails and the most up-to-date news. Also, join me on my YouTube channel. Be sure and like, comment, and subscribe. Just search for Joey Hudson. As always, thanks for spending a few minutes of your day with me. Do me a favor and forward this episode to a few friends. Just click on the share button and send to your contacts. We need to build an army of conservatives to win our country back, and we can do that by continuing to share the truth with our friends and family. Keep those comments coming via the Furman Ford text line, 864-477-JOEY. Email to joey@joeyhudson.com. And I love your messages on the MyPillow message line. Again, that's 864-477-JOEY, 864-477-5639. Be sure and take advantage of the MyPillow special, just $14.88 on the standard MyPillows when you use promo code Joey. Order online at MyPillow.com or call 800-893-4053. We're back again tomorrow and hope you'll plan to join us. Until then, remember, God's got this. He's still in control.